All right, Georgia's preparing or is in the middle of its off week. Dean Legge, Ryan Curley again with you here on Dog Post, another edition of Riding Home. Ryan, Kirby and I asked a lot of different questions, some of the injury updates, Jacksonville, is this a look-ahead game for Georgia? Talking about the game with Florida. Your overall thoughts from Kirby tonight.
Yeah, I mean, he was pretty calm, just as far as mood goes. But, I think he talked something that got tossed around there, and he was talking about tonight, and Nolan Smith was asked about it, that caught my eye was how fast teams are getting the ball out against their pass rush. That
Oh, yeah.
the average is about 2.7 seconds. The quarterbacks they've faced over these 7 games. That's how fast they're getting the ball out against Georgia. That, he said, is much faster than in years past, and so they have to adjust to that. Nolan Smith doesn't seem to be bothered by it. He's, you just adjust to it. But that was something interesting getting thrown around there. He was obviously asked about his thoughts about, should it be a home and home, or should they, continue to play in Jacksonville? And I thought he was pretty candid when he answered that question. Just that not something that he's thinking about right now, but both of them have real benefits.
You're talking about Kirby.
I'm talking about Kirby.
Right.
He just talked about how both, if it's a home and home or if it's in Jacksonville, they both have real benefits, and that's, obviously not completely his decision. And so, I thought he was pretty honest and open about that.
Well, that's different than what he's been talking about in the recent past. At least that's different than the way it's been received.
Well, he talked about the recruiting. Obviously, the recruiting benefit of it being a home and home can't be ignored. But he loves the tradition of going down there, and it makes the university money. So, there's goods and bads to both sides, and at the end of the day, he's not thinking about that during this. He's thinking about. He was adamant, he's just thinking about how can this team be better. They're focusing on just them this week. So this is a completely get right for Georgia week.
Get right. We're continuing to get right. Okay.
Yeah.
They just beat Vanderbilt 55 to, was it 55 to nothing?
Yep.
Okay. And we're still getting right. Okay. Just want to make sure.
That's what happens when you're in an elite program, right?
I mean, I don't know. Sometimes I don't have much to say about this stuff. I mean, I don't know what, in terms of getting right,
No, I'm not saying there's a lot to fix, Dean. I'm saying
the last 6 quarters have been.
There's little stuff that they want to get tighter on, and
Sure.
they, all of them talked about it was Brock, Warren McClendon, Nolan Smith, and Kirby tonight. All of them discussed how important last year's bye week was, and so
it is big. I mean, think about so the week before Georgia played the Gators last year, they played a top 11 matchup against Kentucky. Now, this game was viewed by 6 million people, Ryan, more than 6 million people, actually. And then they had Florida, right? You can pick up the book down below. Make sure you're checking that out. We've been talking about them getting to this point, or at least I have, for a long time. Now, it's only Tuesday. So they have, 11 more days or whatever it is until they play the Gators. But, Jalen is still getting ready. A.D. Mitchell, Kendall. There were a lot of updates tonight, and it didn't look like they were, guys were knocking on the door to play. Maybe Smile Munden more than anybody.
Yeah, it sounded like Jalen Carter was the furthest from playing, just based off of what he was saying. And it doesn't sound like A.D. Mitchell is maybe as close as we thought. He said he hasn't even really seen much. But Kendall running in a straight line, not in drills. But the Jalen Carter, the way he spoke about Jalen Carter didn't sound to me like he was super confident he would play against Florida, but it's too early to tell.
Well, I'll leave that up to Kirby to say. But, in terms of going back to the, should this game be in Athens or Jacksonville, Kirby played at Georgia at a time where, Florida dominated the series. And in his entire time at Georgia, they won once. It was a blowout win, 37-17, but they won once. And with the exception of that game, Georgia was literally blown out every time Kirby and them played them. In 94, it wasn't close. 95, it wasn't close. 96, it was not close. In 98, it really wasn't very close. I mean, they got blistered 4 times out of 5 when Kirby was there. And during that time, for perspective for folks, there was plenty of why are we going all the way down to Jacksonville to play this game? I'm not old enough to say whether that was new in the 90s or not, but it spilled over into the 2000s as well. And I think it's hard for me to say that he's not thinking about that, I guess to some degree. How much of a degree is a good question. Um, I would be, Kirby Smart's done a lot for Georgia. No question about that. But I would be very careful about letting any one head coach decide this is a bad idea, even though we've been doing it for close to 100 years. This is a bad idea. We shouldn't do it anymore. I mean, that's the part to me that I would be wary of. If I were the powers that be at Georgia, whoever those people may be, I don't know, Jerry and I guess Josh, but really the Board of Regents to some degree. But there's something that separates Georgia from everybody else in college football, and this is one of those things. And I think if you're going to not do Jacksonville anymore, you have to really know what you're getting into, and that means killing a tradition of college football that doesn't have to be killed. This isn't Nebraska going to the Big Ten. Now that Kirby has come in and Georgia has dominated this series really since 2011, quite frankly, before Kirby's time. I don't know, I don't know if there's as much, hey, why are we doing this? I'll say this as someone who has to pay every single time, every single year. This trip cost me about $700 to $1,000. I don't know that I'm real pumped up about that. And I know people who are in Athens. I'll just tell you this. I would make about $4,000 if this game were in Athens. So you can balance it out. Every year paying 1,000 or every other year bringing in four, just because of some rental property. And
Well, listen,
downtown Athens would be electric if this game were in Athens. And there's
oh,
another complicated thing too about it, but you go ahead.
downtown Athens, the whole city would be crazy as I enter downtown. Actually, it's funny that you said
Right.
that. Well,
Let me while you're doing that. The other challenge, I think, if you notice in these images, you know, in these images, Georgia was the road team in this game.
so they'll be
So
wearing.
they will be wearing red this year. If this were Georgia's home game, Ryan, they would be playing. Georgia would be playing in these even years. Auburn, Tech, the Gators, so there are three traditional rivals, and Tennessee all at home. And you know who they would play in even years? No one that anyone cares about at home. So that's another challenge
Well,
with
they would have
this.
to. They would have to manipulate the schedule a little bit,
Well, talk
and
to
it's
Georgia
going to
Tech.
get manipulated.
Hold on. Talk to Georgia Tech about that. Talk to Auburn about that. You know, Georgia and Tennessee are probably not going to play in the future because of going to 9-game schedule. I get that part. You've run up on some cops. What's going on?
No, it's fire trucks.
Oh,
This
there's
is
a
the second.
fire. There's a fire. Well, I'm going to turn you down because that is very loud. And, well, we'll see.
As I head down.
I get both of this, and I'm going to talk about this more in a different video. But I understand he's not wrong with what he's saying.
Well,
But you can have recruits in Jacksonville. You could get them to visit Athens. You could fly them down for the game. You can fly them back on jets. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that you could do and make that a special game when it's your home game in Jacksonville. That's another thing that's not been discussed, man, is, recruits could go. I don't know if this is possible. I don't know why it wouldn't be that recruits could go with Georgia to Jacksonville for the game and experience all of that and then fly back to Athens later that night. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I'm not sure I'm smart enough to know the answer to, but I think I would not just take this game out of Jacksonville. That's one thing. That's me.
well, listen. What does Kirby Smart do super, super well? Recruiting. What does he seem to enjoy a lot? Recruiting. So I
Mhm.
think that's probably the biggest point for it. Um, but it is tradition. I do
No,
hate killing traditions for the most part. You know, so at the end of the day, I'm probably a little more neutral on this particular topic than the average person, but I hate killing traditions.
nothing
But
about
home and home between
Jacksonville.
Georgia and Florida would be sick. I'm not gonna lie.
Nothing about playing in Jacksonville has prevented Georgia from getting number one recruiting classes or, as it turns out, winning the national championship. So that's it. And his argument may be, well, I could recruit even better. He's not wrong. He's right. I mean, Georgia never plays its arch rival at home. They don't, and neither does Florida. You know, so and neither does Texas, and neither does Oklahoma. So it happens. And he's got the experience of hosting during Auburn, Alabama. Um, but I don't want to. We have. I'm sorry. I don't want to rabbit hole this thing, but it
Well,
is something. It's
I'll take a time out. The Athens sunset is gorgeous right now, and I'm driving by. Guess where, Dean?
red zone. I hope. Or
Paloma, actually.
Paloma first. Our friends at Paloma Park. We will be at Paloma Park Friday before the Tennessee game. At this stage, it's going to be evening. Obviously, it's already 7 o'clock here.
It'll
I
be a
don't
little
know.
chilly.
I don't know what time we're going to start at Paloma on the Friday before Tennessee, but it'll either be 4 or 5. Please be there. Folks have been getting there, and then if you don't get there early, it gets crowded quick. Not only do people want to like listen to us jibber jabber, they also want to. It's really good food. I'm not just saying that. I mean, I'm really not just saying that. It's very, very good food at
It's a
Paloma,
cool outside area. It
and it's
really is.
just cool. And dude, they've got
Um,
a slew of drinks, by the way. Like if
yeah, it's
you're,
hell. That's
it
why
is a
it's a
nice
popular place
place.
right now because it's just cool. We're
It,
not
when
just
we
sitting on
when
the screen.
when we go on the road, we basically are looking for places like Paloma Park. There's not a lot of those kind of places out there. When we go to Missouri or wherever, and we got to go the night before, there's not a lot of Paloma Parks out there. It's very I cannot I'm not just saying that it's very good, and I would get the chicken tacos, but that's me because the sauce is outstanding on those things. But anyway, um, we'll just see, where they go with these injuries. I mean, I will say, this will be the first time I say this. I think Florida is tremendously overmatched in this game.
Oh yeah.
Um, and I think that they are going to have an extremely difficult time beating Georgia. I think their fans are concerned with the trajectory so far of Billy Napier at Florida. It's been a rough go, Ryan. I will read you their scores so far this season, and you can react. A huge win over Utah, 29-26, and then a 10-point loss at home to the Cats. They had to kick a field goal to win it against South Florida. Excuse me. They had to prevent a game-winning drive against South Florida. Obviously, the loss at Tennessee, that might be the best game they played. They lost 33-38. They blistered Eastern Washington. They beat Mizzou by a touchdown at home, and then the 10-point loss to LSU. I mean, I I don't know, man. I think it's it's amazing that Florida held Tennessee to like 14 points fewer than Alabama did. I don't know what that means, but this is not a consistent Florida team at all.
Yeah, I feel I've watched a lot of. I think I've watched a lot of Florida this year. I've watched at least a small portion of every single one of their games, and not a single time have I been. Well, I think that they could really hang with Georgia. I feel that way when I watch Tennessee. Well, man, they can really
Score.
rack up the scoreboard.
Yeah.
But when I'm watching Florida, I'm like, well, can they consistently drive on
No.
Georgia? Can they consistently make plays? Is Anthony Richardson to me is a liability for them, especially against a Georgia defense that is very, very good. He was a liability last year when they played. Um, yes, he has gotten better, but he hasn't gotten that much better. So, and I've been kind of publicly down on Anthony Richardson, and that's not going to stop until I see him play quarterback better. But he does present the element with his legs. I like Etienne's little brother. I think that their most talented position group is probably their defensive line. Just from what I've watched, I know they have the really big guy. They've got Ventrell Miller as a linebacker.
Really, the really big guy is a liability, though, man, because Georgia's going to get in sets and just keep the guy on the field. A lot of people are going to try to do that.
Yeah. So I mean, but I haven't watched Florida and been like, well, I think they can hang with Georgia, and so I don't think that they're going to hang with Georgia. I know that's over 10 days away, but that's how I feel. The most impressive game they played to me was the Tennessee. Well, I guess the Utah win was
Utah.
solid.
Yeah.
The Utah was solid, and that surprised me. I thought, and when I watched, I was like, oh well, maybe they're a little better than what I thought. But then they just kind of looked exactly how I thought they were going to look after
Not,
once.
yeah, I mean their performances against South Florida, Kentucky, LSU are concerning.
Just not good.
I mean the LSU game they had. I'm trying to remember how LSU let them back into that game. Richardson got loose. They were down 42 to 28, which is a two score not close game. And yeah, I mean it just wasn't great. Of course they have shown. I will say this about the Gators, at least in a couple of games: the Utah game, the South Florida game, the Tennessee game, and the LSU game. They have shown that they will dig it out late. They will try to stick around. They've not quit. But there's a lot of fracturing in that locker room right now. If you judge it by Instagram stories, well, what in the world was that? And then I just that was not a good performance against LSU. Nearly allowing 50 points. That's not what you want at all.
If you let LSU put up that much, Georgia can score 50 points.
Yeah,
And
good.
Georgia, I know this was years ago, but Georgia has put up a lot of points on Florida, in the recent past. Last year it was 30 something, but Georgia can rack up the points too. The way, you've seen it in a few games now this year. Vanderbilt, easy scoring. South Carolina, easy scoring. Oregon, easy scoring. So Auburn, I
Auburn.
thought they scored with these as well. So it was, they struggled a little bit of struggling in the other games, but they still scored. The lowest amount of points Georgia scored this year is 26. That's
Right.
that's good. So um, it's just gonna be one of those things where in all phases Georgia's better,
Yes.
and a lot of things have to go your way to beat a team that's better than you at pretty much everything. And turnovers have to happen. A lot of wrong has to happen, and that's kind of how I feel about this
But
Georgia game. And this is
and
a disciplined Georgia team.
and a lot of wrong happened at Missouri
A
and
lot of
Georgia
wrong happened at Missouri, and they won the game in an impressive
go
way.
going away in the second half. They South Florida is a team that Florida had to survive. I watched that game. That was not impressive. South Florida's 1-6, and that coach is about to get let go. LSU I think is LSU is all over the map, but you can't let somebody score 45 on you at home, particularly when the guy is a liability at times at quarterback. I just I I just don't have confidence right now that this Florida team is good enough. You're not going to hear us get on here if we're being intellectually honest with y'all and say, yes, that particular team can stick with Georgia in all phases of the game, unless we are talking probably about Ohio State and maybe Michigan.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that Tennessee. I mean, Tennessee's got their own conundrum on the defensive side of the ball. Um,
Alabama just scored 49 points on them.
yeah,
Florida put up 30 something points on them.
33.
That's just not going to cut it on the defensive side of the ball. If you're Tennessee and you got to, Tennessee's trying to make it to the playoff, right? This is the first time they've had a real chance to make it.
Oh yeah.
Uh, Not if you're letting people put up that many points on you. You're just not gonna
Well,
get
it was one game. I mean, it's not the end of the world, and Alabama can score just the way Tennessee can. I think that game was a little bit. I mean, obviously it was Tennessee's coming out party, but it certainly was an indictment of Alabama's discipline. 17 penalties, 49 points. It was a Big 12 game, and it was not a very good look at what the future will be for either of these teams if they do not get better defensively. Tennessee did play. Their best game this season, I think, was the LSU game, not the Alabama game necessarily. That's their best win. But you know, Tennessee's had. I mean, they to me are deserving of top four. Would Clemson beat Tennessee?
Um,
This is a neutral site game, right? So same thing, right? I mean,
yeah.
like I would be very curious to see, you know, Michigan against Tennessee, uh, Clemson against Michigan. I'm not super excited to see Ole Miss play anybody necessarily. I think Mississippi and Tennessee have a lot in common in many ways, but you know, this Florida team, at least they stuck in there and fought against the Vols. I'll give them that. They lost the
Yeah.
game, and they tried to fight against LSU. It didn't work out. I think, dude. I mean, frankly, we're at the point where Georgia is the better team, and they will probably be the better team until they get to the playoff if they get there. And it's going to be hard to predict that they lose a game. Florida just doesn't look like a giant obstacle right now, but I know, Ryan, that Kirby Smart is a sociopath about this game, the Tennessee game as well, the Auburn
Yeah.
game, the Tech game. There are certain games that he is really tuned in on. I can read you what he wrote in the book. What I can read you what was written in the book about his halftime speech last year.
Oh, I remember it.
They are going to be ready to throttle Florida if they get the chance. They're going to do it.
He wants to break those B words.
I
He
believe,
hates
Ryan.
Florida, man. That matters.
One more time.
He hates Florida, and I think that matters. I think that's
It
helpful for
does
them.
matter. I will keep it clean. Physically, I want to break them. And as it
Shot
turns,
by me on that one.
yeah, as it turns out, they did break them. They broke that whole program, and now there's a new program in there. Yes, that's Ryan's shot right there. Very good image of Nolan Smith getting the Dogs. Georgia exploded on him last year defensively, and this defense is not the same as last year's, but we'll just have to see how it goes. Off week thoughts very quickly. Have you had?
When I say it's a get right week, I don't mean that they have all these problems. It's a week or so for them to rest their bodies. They better care of their bodies. Let them have a little bit of free time, because all football all the time can be
A
mentally
lot.
draining, exhausting. So, some of the players will go home. Some of the players will enjoy themselves in other ways. And there's really not that many holes for this Georgia team or problems. So having a whole week to take a step back, watch yourself, look at yourself, and adjust with that and get healthier. I mean, Florida's not going to enjoy that, I don't think.
Have you hit up DoorDash yet? Let's be
I
honest.
haven't.
Okay, well,
No, I
listen.
haven't. Well, I have used DoorDash in the past. I haven't used our code yet.
Well, for a limited time, listeners can get 50% off a $20 value, $0 delivery fees when you download the DoorDash app and enter the code DAWG. That's 50% off, $20 value, $0 in delivery fees, Ryan, when you download the DoorDash app in the App Store, and the code is DAWG. Don't forget it's $50. Excuse me. The code is DAWG for 50% off of a $20 value, $0 in delivery fees with DoorDash, subject to change. Terms apply. There are actually a lot of DoorDash restaurants available in Athens. I looked it up last night. So it's late, obviously. So you might want to hit that up, man. I mean, it's just straight up. It would be a good. There's no
I might.
cheesecake,
I'm not cooking tonight, so that might be
right?
the play for me.
There's no Cheesecake Factory in Athens, unfortunately. You could do that. Um, Popeyes, there is a Popeyes in Athens for
There's
sure.
not one conveniently located for me, though.
But that's what DoorDash is for, man.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
that's what DoorDash is for. They're going to get it to you within an hour for sure. 300,000 partners across the country. Um, I think this team right now is this is an important time. I'm not smart enough to say, well, you rest guys. You're not playing them in the biggest game of the season, which is Florida. I'm not sure you'd rest guys. We are still a ways away from that game, but you don't want to rush guys back. Obviously, with the Tennessee game looming, it actually doesn't matter what happens with the Gators, but I would like to see that some of those guys are back, specifically Jalen Carter. AD
Yes.
Mitchell and Jalen Carter both are sorely missed right now. It's hard to say that when Georgia beat the last two opponents 97-10, but still, I'd like to see them back. All
Jalen
right,
Carter changes the backfield for sure.
the defensive line.
I mean, he affects the backfield. My bad.
Well, and
And
Florida, that running back is not bad at all. I mean,
no,
he is the real deal, and Richardson is a really good runner, no question. The other thing about this game, Richardson's going to get some of his plays. He's going to have pop plays. There's going to be stuff that happens. The, I was talking to somebody earlier today. You got to play Georgia straight up the whole time. How many drives out of your 12 are you going to score? And that's the problem. Not one drive. It's you got to do it multiple times. Missouri never could score touchdowns, frankly. The only team that scored multiple touchdowns against these guys, Ryan, is Kent State. That's it. 5 touchdowns in 7 games. That's
yeah,
not ideal. There were multiple games where the other team did not score a touchdown.
it's not common.
Yikes.
They swallowed people up last year. They're doing it again. It just
They
doesn't look
are.
pretty, and that doesn't
It,
matter because they're doing it again.
but dude, one last thing here on your 2.7 per distribution of the ball from the other team. That's not a lot of time. I mean, like it seems
No,
like it, but how far can you get down the field in 2.7 seconds? 15 yards, maybe? Well, probably 20 yards.
depends on the dude.
Probably 20 yards, right? Now it's kind of rolling, but probably 20 yards. That assumes you don't do any sort of shake at the line of scrimmage.
Yeah,
So
you're dealing with getting past another human being.
you're not going to sack people in 2.7
That's why
seconds.
you're not seeing the sacks. But as long as they get pressures, as long as they turn around and get out in pass coverage, then they're doing their job. Affecting the quarterback is what Kirby wants more than just actual sack numbers.
Right. Right. All right.
And
Hey,
they've been doing.
thanks for watching another edition of Riding Home. DoorDash link is right down below. Thanks for watching.